What if your pain, your heartbreak, your despair, your deepest wound, wasn't something to escape, but something to enter? What if it was not just a random burden, but a sacred invitation? In a world obsessed with instant relief and surface-level fixes, suffering is often treated as an enemy. We run from it, numb it, medicate it, or ignore it. But Carl Jung, the great depth psychologist, had a radically different view. He believed that beneath the chaos of suffering lies a hidden purpose. Not just psychological growth, but a spiritual awakening. Suffering, Jung said, might be the doorway through which we meet the divine, the numinous, the transcendent part of ourselves we didn't even know we were searching for. Welcome to the unfolding journey, where we explore the deeper dimensions of human experience: psychology, spirituality, transformation, and the mysteries of consciousness. If you're drawn to meaningful inner work, if you're hungry for more than surface-level answers, then you're in the right place. Today, we'll explore Carl Jung's view of suffering as a spiritual path, a view that challenges how we think about pain, healing, and what it really means to become whole. Carl Jung was no stranger to pain. After breaking with Freud in the early 20th century, Jung went through a profound personal crisis, a confrontation with the unconscious that involved visions, dreams, voices, and emotional turmoil. From this crisis emerged his Red Book, and with it, a revolutionary insight: that suffering is not just psychological, it is spiritual. For Jung, suffering wasn't a pathology to fix, but a portal to transformation. He observed that many of his patients, especially those who weren't clinically ill, struggled with a deep lack of meaning in life. This wasn't simply a mental health issue, but a spiritual crisis. People weren't just anxious or depressed, they were spiritually starved. They had lost contact with their inner self, their purpose, the God image within. And so Jung wrote, "The greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown." What did he mean by that? He meant that suffering often points beyond itself. It demands not merely a solution, but a transformation of consciousness. It asks us to become more than we were, to reach deeper into the soul. Jung believed that the psyche has an inherent religious function, not in the sense of organized religion, but in the sense of a deep-seated drive toward wholeness, unity, and connection with the numinous. Suffering, in this view, is not meaningless. It is the psyche's way of signaling that something essential is missing, misaligned, or undeveloped. It is the soul crying out for attention. In fact, Jung saw religious or spiritual experiences not as escapes from suffering, but as responses to it. He used the term numinous to describe experiences that carry a sense of sacred presence, awe, or mystery, something greater than the ego. The right way to wholeness, he said, is made up of fateful detours and wrong turnings. In other words, suffering is part of the path. It is not the end, but the beginning. Jung believed that neuroses often stem from the lack of meaning. And meaning, he said, often arises not through intellectual insight, but through spiritual experience, through encounters with archetypes, symbols, dreams, and myths that awaken something transcendent within us. In Jungian psychology, archetypes are universal patterns of the unconscious mind. They include the hero, the mother, the shadow, the wise old man, the self, and many others. Suffering often activates these archetypes. For example, the hero's journey is often triggered by loss, betrayal, illness, or crisis. The person must leave the known world, enter the unknown, face trials, and emerge transformed. The wounded healer is one who suffers deeply, but who then becomes a source of healing for others. The dark night of the soul, a term borrowed from Christian mysticism, is echoed in Jung's own descent into the unconscious, a necessary journey into darkness before the dawn of inner light. Jung saw these patterns not just as metaphors, but as deeply real psychic structures that shape our transformation. In dreams, we may meet spiritual figures, gods, monsters, or ancient symbols. These are not random. They are messages from the soul, pointing toward integration, wholeness, the self. The self, Jung said, is not only the center, but also the circumference which embraces both conscious and unconscious. It is the center of this totality, just as the ego is the center of consciousness. The self, in Jung's model, is the deepest spiritual reality within us. And suffering is often what awakens us to its presence. Jung was fascinated by alchemy, not as literal chemistry, but as a symbolic language for psychological and spiritual transformation. The alchemists sought to turn base metal into gold, but Jung saw this as a metaphor for the inner work of turning unconscious suffering into conscious wisdom. In the alchemical process, there is a stage called the nigredo, the blackening, the darkness. This is the stage of dissolution, of despair, of breakdown. But it is necessary. It is the fertile ground from which the albedo, illumination, and rubedo, redemption, arise. In our own lives, the nigredo is our suffering, our grief, our loss, our depression, our identity crisis. It feels like death, but Jung insisted, this is not the end. It is the beginning of the soul's journey. Through symbol, dream, myth, and meaning, we begin to process suffering not as random pain, but as sacred transformation. We are being refined. Let's bring this down to earth. What does it mean to approach suffering spiritually, Jungian style? We stop running from it. We turn toward the pain with curiosity, not avoidance. We ask, what is this trying to show me? What part of me needs attention? We engage symbolically. We work with dreams, art, journaling, or therapy to uncover the deeper meaning of our suffering. We embrace meaning. Instead of just medicating symptoms, we ask deeper questions. What is the soul asking for? What transformation is trying to occur? We awaken to the self. Through suffering, we may experience moments of awe, stillness, transcendence, glimpses of something beyond the ego. These are numinous moments, signs of the spiritual dimension opening up. Jung was deeply respectful of religion, but also clear. Religion must serve psychological wholeness. If dogma replaces experience, it loses its healing power. He warned of the danger of projecting the divine entirely outside ourselves, onto external authorities, rather than recognizing the sacred within. For Jung, God was not just out there. The divine is also within, and suffering may be the very path through which we encounter that truth. In today's world, we are more connected than ever, and more spiritually hungry than ever. Rates of depression, anxiety, and existential despair are skyrocketing. Many feel lost. Jung offers a timeless insight that our deepest pain may contain our deepest potential. Rather than pathologizing every form of suffering, perhaps we should ask, what transformation is this pain inviting me into? The path of suffering, as Jung saw it, is not the opposite of healing. It is the crucible of healing. It is the place where the ego breaks and the self begins to emerge. This is not a comfortable message, but it is a liberating one. To suffer is to be human, but to suffer consciously, to suffer meaningfully, is to begin the journey of the soul. Carl Jung taught that suffering can be alchemical, archetypal, and ultimately sacred. It breaks us open not to destroy us, but to reveal what we really are. So if you are suffering, don't rush to fix it. Don't run from it. Sit with it. Speak to it. Listen to what it wants to show you. You may just find that the very pain you hate is the beginning of your awakening. If this exploration stirred something in you, if you're walking your own path through suffering and seeking deeper meaning, subscribe to the unfolding journey. Here, we go beyond surface-level self-help and dive into the mystery of the soul. Bellhop Bell, click the bell to get notified of future videos. Speech balloon comment below. What role has suffering played in your spiritual journey? Thumbs up like the video if this message resonated. And share it with someone who may be walking through the dark night of the soul. Until next time, may your suffering be sacred, and may your soul unfold.